Picture a scene from the dead of winter. It's 1869.
Right.
And we're in New York City. The air outside is just freezing. I mean, it's that kind of biting, relentless cold that constantly rattles the glass and the window panes.
Oh, yeah, that really bitter chill.
Exactly. And inside this dim, heavy-curtained room, there is a small, pale, and incredibly frail boy. He's lying in bed in the middle of the night, but he is far from asleep. He's actually fighting with everything he has just to draw a single breath.
It's a terrifying image, really.
It is. Our source material describes his severe asthma as a pair of invisible hands literally wrapping around his chest and just squeezing the air right out of his lungs.
Wow.
Yeah, he's gasping. And the doctors are standing right there in the room watching this agonizing struggle, and they're completely helpless.
They don't know what to do.
Right. They can only shake their heads. And, if you walked into that room and looked at this trembling, suffocating child, your first instinct would be just profound pity. But if you follow American history, you already know where this story goes.
Oh, definitely.
You know that this fragile boy fighting for air is Theodore Roosevelt, the man who would eventually charge up a hill in the middle of a brutal war and cement his legacy as America's toughest, most unyielding president.
And that is exactly the core mission of our deep dive into the sources today. We're drawing on some really detailed excerpts from a text called The Strenuous Life: The Making of Theodore Roosevelt.
Great books.
Really is. And our goal here is to explore a profound paradox. We're looking at how the most imposing, fearless leader the world remembers was, he wasn't born with that strength.
Not at all.
Right? He was actually constructed almost piece by piece entirely out of his own weakness. We're going to examine how that fragile boy in New York transformed himself into a symbol of absolute resilience.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're going to take you through a remarkable transformation today, one that challenges a lot of basic assumptions about human limitations. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because to understand the man, we have to start with the pivotal turning point of his youth. It all stems from a very specific, incredibly direct piece of advice he received from his father.
Yeah, and the text notes that his father actually sat him down and delivered these exact words. He said, "You have the mind, but you do not have the body. And without the body, the mind cannot go as far as it should."
Man, that's heavy for a kid to hear.
It is. But what's fascinating here is how that specific framing completely shifts the paradigm of his childhood. I mean, in the mid-19th century, a sickly, asthmatic child was usually treated with intense caution.
Right, the whole stay in bed, don't overexert yourself mentality.
Exactly. The standard medical advice was essentially a mandate for passivity. You stay indoors, you avoid exertion, rest quietly, and just accept your physical lot in life.
Which sounds miserable.
It does. But his father's ultimatum didn't function as a tragic diagnosis. It functioned as a challenge.
I love that.
Yeah, it reframed the young Roosevelt's reality from passive suffering to active self-determination.
So it wasn't about what was happening to him, but what he was going to do about it.
Precisely. The message was clear. Your brilliant mind is trapped in a failing vessel,
Right.
and no doctor is going to fix it for you. It is entirely your responsibility to forge a vessel strong enough to carry your intellect.
And the response from young Roosevelt is just staggering, especially when you consider his condition.
Yeah, he doesn't just accept it.
No, he refuses to accept that his physical weakness is a permanent sentence. He decides to bring the fight directly into his own home. He actually builds a gym right inside the family house.
Which is pretty unheard of for that time.
Totally. We're talking about a child whose lungs regularly betray him, deciding to start lifting heavy weights.
And boxing.
And boxing. He takes up boxing. He forces himself out the door to hike through dense, unforgiving forests. And he eventually starts climbing mountains.
It's incredible.
It's this grueling mechanical process of breaking down his weak muscles and forcing them to rebuild. The boy, who was so terrified of his own lungs that he used to hide in his bed, turns into a man who actively, aggressively chases danger.
And that transition from avoiding the world to aggressively confronting it is the foundational piece of his character. But, we should be careful not to view this as him simply abandoning his intellect to become a brute.
Oh, definitely not.
The excerpts we're analyzing make a crucial point about the duality of his nature. His physical transformation didn't replace his mind. It supported it.
Right.
While he was boxing, lifting weights, and punishing his body, he was simultaneously devouring books.
Just reading obsessively.
Obsessively. He read about history, the natural world, great adventures. He was cultivating a life of the mind that was just as rigorous and expansive as the physical regimen he was putting himself through.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because you take that highly educated, deeply curious mind, and you take that newly forged iron body, and you throw them into the most unforgiving environment imaginable.
The American West.
Specifically, the Dakota Plains. Young Roosevelt doesn't just want to read about frontier adventures in his library. He decides he has to go live them. He heads out west to work as a cowboy.
Which is a huge culture shock.
Exactly. I mean, put yourself in that environment. You have this well-spoken, highly educated Easterner with spectacles and a refined accent, suddenly dropping himself into a camp of rugged, hardened men who have survived on the frontier their entire lives.
The culture clash is immediate.
Yeah, the sources tell us that these seasoned cowboys took one look at him and laughed.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
They saw an aristocratic outsider playing dress up in the dirt.
They absolutely did, and honestly, from their perspective, it was a completely rational reaction.
Sure.
But what the sources highlight is how Roosevelt handled that mockery. He didn't try to win them over by quoting the history books he'd read.
Right.
And he didn't try to assert dominance through his social standing or his wealth, which he easily could have tried to do.
Right. He doesn't pull the "do you know who I am" card.
Exactly. He silenced their laughter through pure, gritty endurance. The text points out specific, undeniable feats that earned their respect.
Like what?
Well, for example, when a blinding blizzard hit the plains, the kind of weather that would make even a veteran cowboy seek shelter. Roosevelt proved he was tough enough to stay in the saddle and ride straight through it.
Wow.
Yeah. He took on the grueling, dangerous work of tracking down actual outlaws across the harsh terrain.
Which is no joke out there.
No joke at all. And this is a critical evolution in his story. It proves that the gym mindset he developed in that New York townhouse wasn't just a controlled artificial fitness routine.
It wasn't just working out for the sake of working out?
Right. It had fully translated into raw, real-world resilience.
So he effectively proved his father's ultimatum to be true. He had built the body, and now that body was capable of taking his mind into these incredible, dangerous frontiers.
Exactly.
But right as he seems to be conquering his own life, we hit the year 1884, and the narrative takes a drastic, incredibly dark turn.
Yeah, this part is just brutal.
We are talking about a tragedy so shocking and statistically improbable that it almost defies belief.
It really does.
The sources detail that on the exact same day in 1884, in the exact same house, both Roosevelt's wife and his mother died.
It's an almost incomprehensible level of compounded grief.
It is entirely devastating. The emotional weight of that dual loss nearly crushed him. I mean, all that physical and mental resilience he had built up was suddenly tested against this massive emotional void.
And his response to this unimaginable grief is highly telling.
Yeah, he doesn't stay in New York to mourn in the comfort of high society. He completely vanishes.
Which just griefs.
He retreats back out to the Badlands of North Dakota, and the text paints this stark, almost haunting picture of him living out there in absolute isolation.
Surrounded by nothing but massive herds of cattle and the endless howling wind.
Right. He takes the deepest, most agonizing pain of his life and drags it out into the most barren, unforgiving landscape he can find.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that retreat into the Badlands is perhaps the most vital chapter in understanding his legacy.
How so?
Well, he wasn't just hiding from the world. He was using the wilderness as a crucible for healing. The sheer elemental reality of that landscape, the dirt, the wind, the physical labor of working the cattle, fundamentally repaired the broken parts of his psyche.
It was therapeutic for him.
Exactly. And this is where our source material bridges the gap between the private tragedy of the man and the massive public legacy of the leader.
Oh, this is the connection to the parks.
Yes. This intensely personal period of relying on nature for emotional survival gave him a fierce protective love for the outdoors. It was this specific painful era of naturist therapy that eventually drove his monumental political efforts to create America's national parks.
That makes perfect sense.
The wilderness saved his life when he was emotionally drowning, and in return, he spent his presidency ensuring that millions of acres of that wilderness would be protected forever.
The idea that some of the most beautiful, protected, natural landscapes in America are the direct result of a man trying to survive the worst day of his life, is just an incredible piece of history.
It really is a powerful way to look at it.
But he doesn't remain in that isolated healing phase forever. He eventually returns to public life, and we jump forward to 1898, where the energy of his life ramps all the way up to maximum.
The Spanish-American War.
Exactly. The war breaks out. And at this point in his life, Roosevelt holds a very comfortable, highly secure government job.
He's the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, right?
Right. He has every excuse to sit behind a desk and manage things from afar. But instead, he leaves that comfort entirely and forms a volunteer cavalry unit that becomes known as the Rough Riders.
Such a famous group.
And this unit is a wildly bizarre, fascinating cross-section of his entire life up to that point.
Oh, the makeup of the group is amazing.
The sources note that he pulled together a chaotic mix of the rough cowboys he had ridden with in the Dakotas, elite athletes from the East Coast, and seasoned military soldiers.
He essentially built a military regiment out of the different facets of his own identity.
That's a great way to put it.
You have the raw frontier grit sitting right alongside disciplined athleticism and military strategy. And it's that exact combination that finds itself thrust into the absolute chaos of combat in Cuba.
Chaos is the right word for it. Imagine the visceral intensity of the battlefield at San Juan Hill. It is a full frontal cavalry charge against entrenched positions.
And Roosevelt isn't just hanging back.
No, not at all. He is not directing troops from a safe distance. He is riding at the absolute front of the line.
Leading the charge.
Leading it.
Yeah.
The text describes him galloping straight into the fire, shouting commands to his men, firing his pistol as bullets are flying through the air all around him, cutting through the grass and striking the men beside him.
It's cinematic, really.
It is. And you have to pause and look at the contrast here. Think back to that freezing room in 1869.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Think about the boy who was being squeezed by the invisible hands of asthma. The boy who couldn't even draw a breath in a quiet room. Now look at the man charging up a hill, inhaling the thick smoke of combat, screaming over the deafening roar of gunfire, and leading men directly into a hail of bullets.
It is the ultimate, undeniable realization of the challenge his father laid out for him decades earlier. The body had not only caught up to the mind, but it was now leading the charge.
Exactly.
And what our sources make clear is that this battlefield courage wasn't just an isolated burst of adrenaline. It became the fundamental blueprint for how he operated in every sphere of his life, especially when he ascended to the presidency.
Right. He took that battlefield mentality to Washington.
He brought that exact same relentless cavalry charge energy into the Oval Office. He viewed his political career through the same lens of strenuous exertion.
He didn't back down from a fight?
Never. He lived life boldly, taking on massively powerful corporate monopolies with the same lack of hesitation he showed at San Juan Hill.
Trust bust.
Yes. He fought aggressively to establish those conservation policies and protect wild lands against industrial interests. His entire political ethos was driven by the supreme confidence of a man who knew he had beaten death as a child and survived the worst emotional blow imaginable as a young man.
So to him, political pressure was nothing.
Exactly. Consequently, he had absolutely nothing to fear from political opponents.
He truly was a larger-than-life figure by the time he reached the White House. But amidst all this imposing, battlefield-tested toughness, the text includes this wonderfully funny, almost absurd detail about his public persona.
I love this part.
The American public looked at this booming, unstoppable force of nature, this man who tracked outlaws and charged through enemy fire, and they universally decided to dub him Teddy.
Petty.
It is the most warm, cuddly, non-threatening nickname imaginable, and the sources note that he absolutely hated it.
He really did.
He despised being called Teddy, but he simply couldn't shake it. No matter how many mountains he climbed or monopolies he busted, the public had made up its mind, and the nickname stuck to him forever.
There's a deep irony there. I mean, he managed to conquer his crippling asthma. He survived the brutal winters and outlaws of the Dakota Plains. He navigated the devastating grief of losing his family, and he rode unscathed through the bullets of San Juan Hill.
But he was entirely powerless to stop a catchy, affectionate nickname from the American public.
Exactly.
Defeated by a nickname. It's a great reminder of the limits of sheer willpower.
Definitely.
So what does this all mean for us? When you strip away the historical myths, the cowboy hats, the presidential portraits, and the battlefield legends, what is the core truth we take away from these sources today?
That's the real question.
The profound takeaway is that every single mountain Roosevelt ever climbed, every political or military battle he ever fought, and every booming, passionate speech he ever gave was, at its roots, Just a quiet, ongoing answer to that frightened little boy in 1869. The man who seemed entirely without fear was forged by a child who used to lie awake at night, terrified that his next breath might be his last. The towering historical legend was simply the echo of that boy's desperate fight for survival.
And this raises an important question, one that speaks directly to you as you listen to this. How do you view your own perceived weaknesses?
Right.
When you examine the things that hold you back, whether they are physical limitations, deep emotional hurdles, or situational disadvantages, do you look at them as permanent boundaries that dictate exactly how far you can go in life?
Most people do.
They do. Or, looking at Roosevelt's framework, are those very limitations actually the exact blueprint for your greatest strengths? Are the things you struggle with the most the exact raw materials required to build your own resilience?
It completely flips the narrative on adversity. Because based on the material we've covered, Roosevelt didn't achieve greatness in spite of his asthma, his physical frailty, or his immense grief.
No, he didn't.
He achieved greatness because of it. Those deficits gave him the exact enemy he needed to fight against. The resistance provided by his own failing body is what built the muscle, both literal and metaphorical, that he eventually used to shape the world.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought to leave you with, something that builds on our deep dive, but steps into the broader philosophy of human ambition.
Okay.
If Theodore Roosevelt had been born a perfectly healthy, robust child,
Right.
if he had never known what it meant to fight for a single breath in a dark, freezing room, would he have ever achieved any of these historical feats?
That is a great question.
Would a comfortable, healthy boy have felt the desperate need to test himself in the Badlands, or volunteer to charge into gunfire at San Juan Hill, or fight with such ferocity as the President of the United States?
Probably not.
Is it possible that towering, world-changing ambition actually requires a profound, painful deficit to push against? Is ultimate human strength really just a formidable scar grown over our deepest vulnerability? It is something to mull over as you step back into your own life today.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the strenuous life. We hope this exploration of resilience stays with you. Take care, and we'll be ready to unpack our next stack of sources with you next time.